Having a little entertainment with our. Okay, now we want to find our mute for the YouTube. Do you know?
Having a little entertainment with our.
There we go. All right. I think we have these things worked out now. Let's see how this goes. Hi, Julia. Can you hear me okay now?
Hi, yes.
Okay, we got just all little technologies worked out there. Oh my goodness. So it's my pleasure and my honor and my holy privilege to have you here. I'm so grateful that you're with us. And Julia Fay is a trauma therapist and a child therapist. She's also an amazing yoga teacher, and she also sings kirtan and has the most beautiful healing voice, the power of her voice, and is a gifted yoga teacher also. And so I'm so grateful that you have come to us with all of your gifts and your talents, and thank you for working with all of our fun technology, so fun or entertaining anyway, technology things. So I'm so happy to be with you today. And so I thought it would be interesting to begin. There's, I think about children right now, and just like, the high entertainment value for them. Like, it's just a really challenging time, and for our parents and for our children at this time. And I know that is your work, and I thought it would be interesting to share. I found a really beautiful poem by Atia Lin, who's 11 years old, called Dream. And I thought that might be a nice way to begin. So
absolutely.
If you are the night's cry, I am the sea's moan. If you are the sun's beam, I am the tree's shade. If you are the silk hand of a dream, I am the darkness that takes you in. If you are the world, then I am everything. If you are the world, then I am everything. And that's called Dream by Atia Lin, and she's age 11.
Wow, such wisdom.
I thought that would be a powerful way to share, to invite in the youth. And so Julia, I always like to ask people first, what does real medicine mean for you? Like, what have you found real medicine to be in your own life and work?
Yeah, I'm sure that answer would change by the day that you ask me, but for today, my answer is anything that brings you home to yourself. Anything that helps ground you in your body, that delights your senses, and helps connect you to the web of life.
And so I'm wondering about Saffron is here. It looks like she wants to go out there. You're going to stay inside for the talk. Yes, you are. We're going to all be inside for the talk now. You're going to hear her. She's so funny. Oh, my cat. So I'm wondering about, I overheard you talking in class the other day or last week about regulation. And I think for both parents and for children and for grandparents and aunts and uncles and all of the people that love the children, what are you noticing? What are you finding? What is your perspective at this time around how we can maybe regulate ourselves in this time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we need it now more than ever. And so my take on it, I'm a play therapist, and I've been working with yoga for a really long time, and the power of chant. And so the nervous system is something I'm really passionate about. I'm also a certified nutritionist, so I've studied a lot of the biochemistry involved with when we get dysregulated, when we have cortisol and adrenaline coursing through our bodies to the point sometimes where we hit that dorsal vagal shutdown. The dorsal vagus nerve is that part of the brain that causes us to totally shut down. And And then there's the fight or flight, which is a little bit more sophisticated, but also not always helpful. You know, sometimes it's really helpful to have that fight or flight. We need it. And these tools have really kept us safe and kept lots of species safe, but they are very ancient parts of the brain that don't help us go to work and homeschool and do all the things that we need to do. So to be able to really feel successful in our routines and our life right now, we need to cue into the ventral vagal system, which is part of the sympathetic nervous system. And it's the part of us that feels connected with each other. And it's the part of us that needs to be with our tribe, with our herd. You know, we are mammals and we seek a lot of comfort through proximity with other people and through play. And so that is what I'm really coaching a lot of my families around is how are you spending quality time together? And how are you able to play? Because when we play, we are feeling more in our bodies. We are feeling more attuned to the people we're in the room with. And we're feeling more connected to the natural world as well. And so when kids are kind of self-destructing, hitting their limit, having tantrums, they're basically saying, I can't regulate myself right now. I need help.
Oh,
And as mammals, we are able to co-regulate very well. So the adult then needs to be able to be regulated enough to calm the child and be the heavier vibration in the room that allows that child to calm down. And I think what's really challenging right now is a lot of the outlets that adults have to stay regulated aren't available. We can't go to the gym. We can't go to the movies. We can't get together in groups. And so we have to be a little bit more diligent and proactive in how we're regulated, because you might have seen this before, you know, when the parent gets really anxious or elevated in their nervous system, their fight or flight is going, everyone else in the room is like, ooh, you know, like even the family dog will get upset, or the cats will leave the room because the energy is intense and they're all feeling it, right? So we can lift everyone else to the anxious vibration that we're experiencing, or we can help lower them down to a more relaxed state. And so the good news is that we all have a really robust sensory system that responds very well to input, and we can figure out for ourselves what helps our body feel good and what feels agitating. And because sensory processing is a spectrum, things that are going to feel agitating to me might feel really good to you. And so that's good to know if you're living in close proximities with your family right now. You know, that the things that might make you feel good might actually be agitating and, you know, ratcheting up your family members' arousal state. And so they might be quicker to anger. They might snap at you. You know, things might get thrown sometimes when there's no language for it. Children will often throw things or hit things just because they don't have the language to say, I feel out of control in my body right now. And so being able to recognize in those moments, it can be very triggering for adults as well. You know, it's like, oh my gosh, this kid is triggering me and now I'm out of control. And so I really work very thoughtfully with families and parents about how do you take a time out? How do you lean on the tools you have? What can you step away and model how to regulate and bring yourself back? Whether it's just taking a deep breath, whether it's taking a drink of water, stepping outside for a few moments of fresh air. When you have fresh air, of course, right now we have smoke, so that's maybe on the agitating side.
Fires.
So, you know, tuning into your senses and what delights your senses and what calms your senses is a really helpful piece right now to feel calmer in your body.
Really powerful. You know, I have read some about play therapy, and I love the idea of play, and I think people are really not feeling it. You know, like I notice with my own clients and patients and, you know, the people that I work with is that, you know, it seems like there's a very high level of of fear and kind of feeding the fear. They say that there's like the good, the true, and the beautiful in us, and then there's also the fearful and and then which one wins? The one you feed. The story of the two-headed wolf. Or the self-doubting or diminishing in my nature, and the loving and supportive in my nature. Which one wins? The one that I feed. And so I'm wondering, like, how could we maybe feed ourselves with some play? Maybe lighten the fuck up. I don't know. Good to use an expletive right there, But like, like what are some wisdoms that you carry around that?
Yeah, what fear is for me is it kind of gives us blinders and tunnel vision. It makes things feel very serious, very dire, and that's by design. Our body wants us to pay attention when there's a real threat, because that's how we've survived and stayed safe. Right now, the danger is that we're under a chronic stress. Right. So we need to tap out. We need to find moments in our life where we can take that adult, thoughtful mind and put it to the side and allow our inner child to come forward, because children know how to play. This is a cross-cultural phenomenon. There's no child around the world that is not born with the capacity and the know-how to play. They will create toys out of nothing, right? They create their own imagination or imaginative play if there's no object to play with, right? Like, it's just inbred in us. And what we say in play therapy is play is our first language. So we're all born with the first language of play, and that's because play is symbolic. So before we even have language, we're able to play and express ourselves through the symbols of the toys and the actions that we're using. And play also requires a sense of safety. A child's not going to play in my playroom if they don't feel safe, because it's a vulnerable thing. It's a vulnerable thing to show your true self and what you're really thinking and feeling, because it comes through. Anyone who's ever done improv or any kind of acting knows that, there's just this force that comes over you when you step into a role. And that's a vulnerable experience. And so the first thing to do is to remind ourselves that just because we might be feeling fearful, it doesn't mean we're unsafe. The body kind of hijacks our minds into thinking we're physically unsafe when we're actually quite safe in our homes most of the time. It's those outer threats of the world that keep our brains spinning and keep activating that fight or flight or shut down, freeze, fawning experience in the nervous system. But usually, most people, if you have safe family members and enough food and such, your main needs are met, then you are safe. And so letting yourself recognize that safety so that you can step into a playful space. And the ways that, are an easy entry into play is if you happen to live with a child. Children are very good teachers and they love to teach you how to play. That is a big part of my practice right now with COVID, is teaching parents how to do play therapy at home, how to be a better playmate. Because what I find is parents think they're playing, but they're actually like controlling what all the things do. And they're giving teachings. They're like, well, don't do it like this, do it like that. Or they have their own ideas, like, well, this guy's now wants this. And the kids will just shut down. They're like, no, you don't get it. You're not doing it right. It's just not as enjoyable for them. But when they get to lead the play and the parent is just following them through that, there's so much delight and spontaneous joy that comes from the child that it just ripples out, and the adult feels it right away. So that's an easy entry point. Another entry point is if you have a pet. Playing with your pet is always a lovely thing, because again, you get to delight in that co-regulation with another human or another being, in this case with a pet in the room. Art and music are ways that we play. Word play, you are a poet, so that is a form of play. Trivia nights with our friends can be forms of play. Any time that you kind of stop taking yourself so seriously, you know, just try something new. You can play in the garden, you can play in the kitchen. When we get out of that rule-based, I have to do it this way or else I'm not doing it right, or there's something wrong with me. If, you know, we have to take those judgments out, because it makes it too serious. It shuts down our creativity.
Yeah.
So.
And I also think that it's just really interesting, you know, Julia. I mean, I'm thinking about, I think 3 people today have said to me, like, the world is on fire, you know. And I was thinking about that. There's a couple different things I was thinking about, but one of the things that came to mind is, you know, my great grandfather is from Mexico, so I have a lot of these hearts from Mexico around my home, and on the top of them there are these flames, you know, that these flames, and it's, you know, the Sacred Heart, like that's, you know, with the Lady Guadalupe, you know, that she has the Sacred Heart, and that Sacred Heart always has a fire or a flame in it, and, you know, it's ignited. You know, it's a heart that is ignited, and so I'm thinking about the fires. I'm thinking about, you know, the heart. I'm thinking about, you know, what we love, you know, who and what we love. But I'm also thinking about how out of balance we are. You know, and I think that that's the cause, like these passions have turned into something else, you know. And so I was thinking about that, and I was just wondering about, you know, do you have some ideas or ways that that you feel we could kind of bring ourselves back into balance at this time, or maybe add a little bit of water to that fire, maybe add a little bit of, you know, like, because, you know, maybe praying for rain, maybe, you know, what are some processes or projects or ideas that might help? What are your thoughts about that? I was just curious to open that.
Yeah, you know, I think so much of our society is goal driven and competitive,
Mhm.
and it eats away at our joy. It eats away at our ability to grow because we're so afraid of failure. You know, I think of many of my friends and peers who, you know, I'm in my late 30s now, and have chosen career paths that maybe weren't really suited for them because of that fear of failure and needing to succeed.
Mm.
Right. Whereas if they had had that freedom as a young person to try and explore and fail, they might have discovered a whole different path for themselves that brought that joy inherently, to their lives. And not everyone has the luxury of dedicating a career to something that is creative, but having good hobbies and outlets where we don't take ourselves so seriously, you know, even, you know, thinking of when you watch adults at a karaoke situation or out in a park, like with kids, what are they willing to do and what are they not willing to do? You know, it's so interesting how
Yeah.
quickly adults will censor themselves because they don't want to look foolish.
Oh, interesting.
Whereas I'm very much the opposite. Like I will go into the crowd of children and act a fool every time because it's
Mhm.
delightful for them, you know, and I get joy out of
Mhm.
doing that, you know. So I
Totally.
think that desire to be good at things right away really gets in the way. That perfectionism, that the hard work needed for mastery in something gets in the way. We get discouraged.
Mm.
And so then we think, well, that's not for us. When really, if we kept at it, it might be the key that really unlocks a lot of happiness.
Like something else about us.
Yes.
Yeah, like something emerging or something that someone else maybe put away for us that, you know, it's time for us to restore it.
Yeah, and I think attunement with the natural world is also a really important piece when we're talking about feeling out of balance. And that's one thing, you know, I printed off this resource. It's from Ruby Jo Walker's website. She has some lovely things. She's a trauma and somatic therapist, but her 4 main points of resiliency The first one is orientation, which really is just orienting to the natural world and our place in it.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've also learned through my trauma studies is, if we don't have a good adult role model to co-regulate us as children or even as adults, maybe we're cohabitating with another adult who's like real anxious all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Nature is always there to co-regulate us.
Oh,
We
God,
can
that's
always
really
go out
beautiful, Julia.
outside, and the key to finding regulation is to finding something to center around.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we're dysregulated and we're starting to freak out about something, we often describe it as, I've lost myself, I'm losing my mind. We have this sense that we're in chaos and we don't know where our edges are. It's like
Yeah.
I'm just this amorphous mess, and we don't feel we can't feel calm in that chaotic
Mm-hmm.
moment. But if we can lay on the earth and feel our edges, if we can have someone put, pressure on our big bones, our long bones, we can hug ourselves, we can get weighted blankets, we can get in water, baths
Beautiful.
and pools are very soothing to a lot of people, especially kids, because that sensory piece, the pressure, where they know their edges. Where are my edges? You'll even find, I have parents report to me that when they can't find their kid, they'll often find them like squished between the couch and the wall. And that is a regulating tactic.
Ah,
That is the child knowing and listening to their body about how to calm themselves and feel good in their body. Laying on the floor with your back and your feet up in the air, just getting the whole spine on a flat surface like that is also very regulating. But again, kind of my beginning point here is, when in doubt, you can always turn to nature and find something regulating about it. And I know some of us are feeling a little stuck in with the fires and the smoke right now. So maybe it's listening to sounds, nature sounds, instead of actually going outside. But those things are available, on so many apps and websites, because they bring calm. They help us regulate. They help us remember who we are and get back into our bodies. And that's the biggest thing. How do you get back into your body? And also just, being here on this, I have a koosh ball in my hand. This is how I'm staying in my body right now.
that's really, I love
So have fidget toys, have something.
glass. Yes, with my bird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a teacher that will put a weighted blanket on her lap during webinars, because that helps keep her grounded in her body. So, yeah, but and so I led in with the 4 points of resiliency, not to give you all a cliffhanger here. The other 3 are taking in the good. So, Char, this is like you're teaching that 80% is working, right? Let's not get stuck on the 20% that's not working. So when we can let ourselves know that we actually are safe, that we have what we need for now, we can acknowledge and feel at ease, because some good things are happening. The third component is self-compassion. So just giving yourself a break. I mean, that judgment piece really takes a toll. There's no right way to do COVID. There's no right way to homeschool your kid during COVID. We're all figuring it out together and we're making mistakes. I mean, we started this in a very strange way today because we couldn't figure out the mute on YouTube, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're self-compassionate. We're not beating ourselves up over that. We're moving on.
Yeah. It's something sweet and human,
Yeah. And then the final point is gratitude. And I'm going to read it because I love how she put it. Being grateful for what we do have, even if there are losses.
Mm.
And I thought that was really sweet. Like, even in the experience of loss, there's gratitude for being touched so deeply. Oh.
Thank you, Julia, so much. And that's interesting because I've seen my nieces and nephews do that over the years. I mean, I have nieces and nephews from the age of like 1 to the age of 18 right now. So I have like the full, gamut of nieces and nephews. And I've watched them do that, like wedge themselves, at the end of the sofa and just like they figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And of course you're going to go and find them if they've upset themselves or they didn't like something their brother or sister did or but you'll find them in these little spots, kind of like how cat will do. They just like want to find their own little spot.
Mm-hmm.
um
Or forts. Forts are very powerful for kids.
oh yeah, building a fort.
Because they get to have a domain where they're in charge and they don't have to interact with an adult if they don't want to in that fort. And that's actually a very important piece for kids, to give them an opportunity to be free from us. We can be stressful. They need a break sometimes.
A vacation, parent vacation. I need a vacation from my parents. I know I did. I definitely did.
Yeah. And so a fort is a really easy way to create that private space for them. And it's also a little more confined, so they can maybe wedge in and get that sensory piece too.
Oh, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. The other thing that came to my mind was the Four Rivers while you were talking, by Angeles Arian, the river of love, the river of, where I'm deeply touched and moved by life, and, the river of surprise, like, oh, surprise, like, how do we do with surprises? And, can we give ourselves and each other like these positive or wonderful surprises? And, the river of challenge, can I be challenged and, use the challenges to learn? And of course the river of inspiration, where, what, who inspires me. And and that goes along with that teaching of the 80% and the 20%. And I think that's one of the things we want to notice, is that 80% of the world is kind of grooving right along. We've got 80%, more than 80%, that's really working right now. And uh, so I think about, what are some of the ways that we can, just two things that are on my mind. What are some of the ways that we can take notice of that? Or, what are some of the ways that you've kind of integrated even into your own life or your own practice, where you've really been able to attend to the noticing of those four rivers? And then the other thing I was thinking about was, I was thinking about just this kind of interesting process we're in, where we can't go outside, which we need to do, but we can't, it's like we can't be inside, but we can't be out. We're supposed to be inside, but maybe we can be, but so it's kind of like things are, like it's this all the unknown.
Yeah, the West Coast, we're kind of in a weird conundrum where we can't be outside and we're kind of stuck inside, but not with too many people.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, so it's like the do's and the don'ts and the unknowns. And, so just like, what would you recommend for kind of facing the unknown at this time for parents and children?
Yeah, really good questions. I want to give a shout out to Lisa Dion at this moment, because she is a very amazing thought leader and teacher in play therapy. She's the founder of Synergetic Play Therapy and has a great website with lots of resources. But in her webinars, she did a 6-part series called Regulating Through the Coronavirus.
Wow, that's
So
cool.
a lot of what I'm going to share right now, I picked from her. But one thing she really emphasized is, the brain is wired to pause when there's novelty, when there's something new, when there's an unknown. The brain has a natural reflex to pause. And in that pause, we can either start spinning into all the hypotheticals of all the terrible things that could happen in that unknown situation, or we can come to it from a little bit more adventurous, self-esteem place, right? Well, I know I'm capable and I can respond as needed. And so we'll just see what happens. But it's always going to be dysregulating because it's new. The brain is just wired to be alert
Right.
to anything that's new or a surprise. And the way we work through it is we try to make the unknown known. So if there's a situation that you're really worried about, if your child is really worried, like, what if I get sick at school? Like, what if my school opens up and I end up getting sick, or what if my parent gets sick? Then you talk about the real steps that you're going to take as a family to address that. Well, if you end up getting sick, then the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take your temperature, and we're going to call the doctor, and we're going to have an appointment, and we're going to go through a drive-through testing site, and in that, all the worst case scenarios that the child or the adult might have, you think it through. So then you have a plan. And then if that unknown becomes, or if that scary situation ends up happening, the body is primed to be able to respond. Because the fight or flight impulse is designed to mobilize us. It wants us to do something. And when things feel too big, when we don't see how to get from point A to point B, then we go to another reflex of the body, which is the shutdown, the collapse. And that is the most primal part of the body. And so when people go through really traumatic events, often, they just lose consciousness, their body totally collapses. And that's why it's keeping it safe, right? It's keeping itself safe. But that can also happen when we're thinking through some of these hypothetical situations or trying to make a plan for our future. And then people will just feel hopeless. Well, there's nothing I can do. I can't possibly figure this out. And so then the solution to that is to break it down into really small steps until you can look at the step and think, I know how to do that. I can do that piece.
Oh, that one little,
one
little chunk. It's like, it's a bite-sized piece. Like I can chew that,
Yeah.
Figure out how to do that. Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. For example, like I have this application that I need to fill out, and for whatever reason, I'm very overwhelmed by it, but I could do 1 page a day. I could sit down and just do 1 page, and that is accessible. My brain doesn't flip its lid, as Dan Siegel talks about, where your thinking brain goes offline and all of a sudden you're functioning from a reptilian place that has no idea what an application is,
Not helpful. Not helpful.
Not helpful. So the hope is that we can, break things down to where they're knowable, where we feel like we have some mastery or skills to meet the challenge. And, the goal isn't to be calm, to be regulated doesn't mean that we're just zen all the time. You're still going to have moments of stress and challenge. It just means that we are aware of our sensory experience while we're going through the challenge.
We're aware of our sensory experience as we're going through the challenge.
Yeah, we're staying connected to the body. And so that's where, just, clicking a pen, hearing the sound, feeling it. Yeah. That might be enough in that moment to bring you back so your thinking brain can be included.
I was also wondering about, because I think about like, what are the ways that play therapy can assist with trauma? I was thinking about trauma. I was thinking about when I was preparing for a talk, I was thinking about when I was in Idaho with my mother this last summer, and these 2 baby deer were born in our front yard. And the mother is like cleaning the deer. And then, you're watching them stand up. And it was this mesmerizing moment for me to witness that. There were 2 fawns. She cleaned them, and I got to watch them for a very long time, learn to walk. And then a couple of weeks later, they came back. And that talk about birth itself is like, it's just like, oh my God, you just went through that. And now you're going to stand up. Like what just happened, like, whoa. Right. But a couple of, I think it was even just a week late. They were around a bit, but then a week later they came back and they were like, they're like children. Fawns are like children. And I had never seen that before, Julia. I was like, oh my gosh. Like, and they were like jumping around and like puppies and like kind of like, doing this to their mom and, and then they'd be nursing and then they'd be jumping over each other and playing and, more like puppies than deer, I thought, or like children, human children, and so I just fell in love with all of the Earth's children in that moment, including fawns. So I was just curious about that, like,
Mm.
what that opens for you, or, what you feel when I.
Yeah, well, the beauty of play therapy is that it allows a child, and I'm just going to speak in reference to children, but this could certainly be true for adults, um, is that it gives them an opportunity to try on different roles, different ways of being in the world, so that they can feel what that's like in their nervous system. And often, once a child can kind of figure that out, then they have a sense of mastery and more control over it. And that's also true with a traumatic experience where if they, let's say they have medical trauma.
Mm.
So, a medical kit is a very important piece of any play therapist's playroom. And it has been shown in the research that when a child gets to manipulate the tools of the medical kit and be the one in charge of the shot or the one in charge of the doctoring, that they get a sense of mastery and control over it. It's not something being done to them anymore. It's something that they get to do. They have agency
Mm.
over it. And then they have less activation in their nervous system because they feel more control. And when we have control, we feel safe. So again, it comes back to the sense of safety. And so kids who've been through big traumas in the playroom, sometimes they'll play out a scenario many, many times just because they need that repetition to feel like they actually have control over it. Because often, we are traumatized because we don't have control. The control was taken from us. And so through play, it's a low stakes way of gaining control because it's not going to hurt anybody, right? No one, it's more of a private thing. No one's going to
Mm.
shame us or make us feel weird about how that played out. That's the beauty of the therapeutic space is I get to just be a neutral witness and reflect what I'm seeing and the emotions I'm seeing in that child. And when they hear it reflected and they feel a grounded, attuned adult validating their experience, it helps them integrate it and it helps them make peace with it and release it. When we're witnessed, we're changed, as
Mm.
you often teach us in class. And that is so, so true in the play therapy realm.
Mm. And I think my last question, Julia, would be about, how can adults engage in the play? Like, what would you recommend for an adult, especially, those of us who maybe get a little more, melancholy or curmudgeony, or, how can we, maybe lift our spirits a little bit?
Yeah. I think if we can get sensory experiences involved, that's really powerful. So, sand, kinetic sand can be really gratifying, clay, finger paint.
Fun.
If we can like just get a little messy and get the senses involved a little bit more, often that brings out a playfulness that helps us to connect to our inner child.
Mm.
So I would say that would be one way. Um, make a mess on purpose. I don't know, like go outside and make a mess, do it
Oh.
without worrying about the cleanup afterwards. I think adults tend to be thinking more like chess players where they're like 3 steps ahead, which for good
Oh.
reason, but it's like, well, if I were to actually cut loose and do this thing, then I'll have to clean this up or that'll be a pain or
Mm.
so just being more in the moment, being in the present
Mm.
moment. Also finding thinking of other sensory experiences. Maybe it's something soft. Maybe it's having stuffed animals
Oh,
around to
that feels
cuddle
so
with if you're not
good.
able to have pets. I find stuffed animals are a really good stand in. Art is always
Yeah.
really good. And again, like getting that judging mind out of it. Let it be fun for just the process of it. And I think that's the other thing that we can take from play and play therapy is play doesn't have an end goal. It's not, I'm building this tower. It is, I am exploring what's going to work and it might not. And when we're really attached to what it looks like at the end, we're not playing.
Oh,
If we can just be open to it not going perfect or making mistakes or it looking terrible at the end, but we had a lot of fun doing it, that's where the joy juice, as my teacher Carrie Hamilton calls it, which is the oxytocin and the endorphins and all of the biochemistry that goes with fun and connection and joy, that's when that comes through, is when we can just be spontaneous and move our bodies. You know, dance is also a really great way to play.
maybe put paint on your feet.
There you go.
Dance and
Yeah, dance. I know some friends who are really into acro yoga, you know, with a partner where you can play around, or contact dancing. If you happen to have someone in your home to do that with, I know that's very gratifying to a lot of people, where you can just move your body and express yourself without having to achieve anything. You know,
so beautiful, so beautiful. Well, thank you so much. And I wanted to end with this little prayer for deliverance by Marianne Williamson from her book Illuminata, and I just love her work, and so creator, I would say creator, however or whoever that creator might be for you. Dear creator, deliver to us our passion, deliver to us our brilliance, deliver to us our intelligence, deliver to us our depth, deliver to us our nobility, deliver to us our beauty, deliver to us our power to heal, deliver us to you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And if you'd like to reach Julia, her website is stronghearthealingcenter.com, stronghearthealingcenter.com. And I'm so deeply touched and moved by our conversation and your willingness to extend and serve in this way. Julia, I cherish you and thank you for all that you've given us today.
oh, well, thank you for this opportunity to share some of my passions. It's an honor.
Thank you.